integrity and courage.
This is Juana Philip.
I am a Romanian journalist.
The weird thing is, we were in the middle of putting together this episode, which is about the erosion of democracy in other countries around the world. And I had just interviewed a Hungarian journalist to ask him for advice on how to approach our own backslide in the US. And then, all of a sudden, here was a Romanian journalist asking me for the very same advice? For context, Romania was on the eve of an election in which a Trump-loving nationalist was maybe going to win the presidency. In the end, he lost out to the pro-democracy, pro-EU candidate.
Well done, Romania.
We here at OTM were a bit rattled by the irony
Poland
of her
didn't
request.
succeed in that test.
What was your thinking about reaching out to an American journalist?
Because for a lot of time there was this narrative of US press as being, a very high standard, and the US democracy being the democracy we have to follow. So when this started to crumble, it was very weird for us.
Yeah, I think
Weird for us
maybe
too.
the reason that your email caught me off guard
Trump
is that I have
turning
this
us into
kind
Russia
of
too.
ingrained American exceptionalism. I don't know if that's the right word, but and then I guess
Yeah,
just
sounds
to
like
hear
what
from
it is.
an unbiased
If
outsider.
you're a journalist
say,
and you don't realize that
now
we've been taken
live
over by
in a
fascists.
liberal regime. Honestly, it was just a little bit shocking.
Yeah,
It
we live
just
in a
felt
liberal
like
regime. Where have you
were
been the last
jumping
10
to
years?
A conclusion that I wasn't ready to confront.
It's very funny in a way that you
Not
say that, because we
representing
actually
journalism
had a
very well.
discussion in the newsroom when we were writing the questions, because we were wondering, is it fair to call US like an illiberal regime? But then we were talking and we were thinking but they are deporting people for no reason. They are threatening media in a way that is truly undemocratic. If it would be other country, would we still have this discussion?
The hallmarks of fascism. So yeah,
So
America's
where
checking the
is
boxes,
US
filling
right
out the
now
whole
on the
bingo card
democracy
of
to autocracy spectrum?
autocracy.
Christina Pagel,
Full
a
blackout
professor and
bingo card.
mathematician at University
That's why we need to
College
stop
London,
him, flip the
made
card,
a
kill the
handy checklist
revolution.
and posted it to her Substack. She categorized 464 things Donald Trump has done since returning to the White House and sorted them all into 5, sometimes overlapping categories of ways in which he's undermining democracy. Category 1, weakening democratic checks and balances.
Trump ordered a late-night purge of government watchdogs, firing at least a dozen inspectors general.
Agencies have to submit draft legislation to the White House for review.
Category 2, weaponizing state power against personal enemies.
Trump is targeting law firms directly tied to prosecutors involved in cases that have been against him.
Category 3, undermining the rule of law.
The Justice Department ordering federal prosecutors to drop corruption charges against New York City Mayor Eric Adams.
Category 4, controlling information.
Moving forward, the White House press pool will be determined by the White House press team.
And Category 5,
deleted a bunch of
suppressing
stuff.
dissent.
One of the latest people to be detained by federal agents and threatened with deportation is a doctoral student at Tufts University. Her supporters say she's being punished for an op-ed in her student paper.
You want to focus on elite universities because elite universities establish the cultural signals that then flow downward to the university sector as a whole.
That last voice is conservative activist Christopher Rufo, who's led the charge against diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives at universities. He took inspiration for some of his views from a visit to Hungary in 2023. Actually,
get
a
rid of
lot
Viktor
of American
Orban, too.
conservatives have made a similar pilgrimage to learn the ways in which the democratically elected Prime Minister Viktor Orban
Putin puppet.
reordered Hungarian society to suit his right-wing populist agenda. The New Yorker's Andrew Marantz also spent time in Budapest, and after Trump's inauguration and the raft of anti-democratic moves that followed, it became clear to him that the new administration had taken more than a few lessons from Orban's playbook.
When you dig into how democratic backsliding often works,
They told us how
it's very
Trump scored
rare
on those
that
486
it's just an
actions.
edict that goes out from the government that says, starting tomorrow, there will be no more democracy. And so I think a lot of times when someone like Christopher Rufo, who I think you could argue is the most influential activist of the last few years, goes to Hungary, a lot of what they see is a way of hollowing out democratic institutions from within without setting off people's alarm bells prematurely.
Please see my
or
channel.
without
I've
setting
never
off
heard of
people's
Christopher
alarm bells
Rufo.
even maturely.
Yeah,